Hello and good evening to everybody. I'm Jane Kamain from Nine Arches Press. As we all start to join the Zoom room event here live on YouTube, I'll just give everyone a few moments to come in and join us. It's wonderful to see so many of you joining us on YouTube tonight. So hello, please do post in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. It's really lovely to have you here. And absolutely delighted to be here for a wonderful launch of two very special books by Degna Stone and Roy McFarlane that Nine Arches have published this autumn. So really delighted to be here. And it looks like we have a wonderful audience gathering tonight on YouTube. So without further ado, let's call this event thoroughly launched and let's get started. I'm really delighted to have some very special guests this evening as well. We have Amy Acre, who is joining us, as well as readings from Degna Stone and Roy McFarlane. And the launch for these two books, Proof of Life on Earth and Living by Troubled Waters, two books we're extremely excited to be sharing with you tonight, and some very special readings, I think, as well. So if you're in the audience, please do say hello. It's really lovely to know that you're there, gathering with us around the digital campfire, as it were, to share poems, to talk, and to know that you're out there with us is really lovely. We've been doing these live events now for the best part of 2 years, and it's always really good to have that connection and to know that our audience are listening in. So without further ado, just to share with you the books that we're launching tonight and to start introducing our readers. So I'm really excited to have a fantastic lineup tonight and to be celebrating two books which seek to bear witness, create space, give voice and make vital connection. And these are books which invite readers in and ask them to do that vital work of understanding and change making that only poetry can help to inspire. It's really exciting, therefore, to have two poets with us tonight who are going to be launching these wonderful collections. And also we're thoroughly delighted to be joined by Amy Acre. Now, Amy's going to be reading first for us. So to tell you a little bit about her. Amy Acre is a poet and freelancer from London and the editor of the outstanding Bad Betty Press, who've just been shortlisted for the Michael Marks Awards for Best Publisher, alongside two of their pamphlets also shortlisted for Best Pamphlet, a thoroughly well-deserved recognition of the press and their vital work in poetry over several years. Amy's pamphlets include And They Are Covered in Gold Light from Bad Betty 2019 and Where We're Going, We Don't Need Roads from Flipped Eye 2015, which were chosen as Poetry Book Society pamphlet choices. Her poem Every Girl Knows won the 2019 Verve Poetry Competition, and she featured on the Last Dinosaurs 2020 track In the Belly of the Whale, streamed over 600,000 times on Spotify. In 2021, she wrote and recorded Radio 4's The Ballad of a Bet, a BBC pick of the week, and her work has appeared in the Poetry Review, Poetry London, White Review, Poetry Wales, Ambit, PN Review, and elsewhere. Her debut collection, Mother Song, will be published by Bloomsbury in 2023. Definitely a collection to be looking out for. Will you please give a warm welcome to the wonderful Amy Acre.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here tonight and to be celebrating Degna's and Roy's books. I'm really excited to hear from them. So I'm going to read you a few poems from my upcoming collection. And the first one is called My Father is the Unmarked State. And it's a poem that I wrote after reading a book called Writing the Other by Nissi Shaw and Cynthia Ward. In this book, it talks about the unmarked state as being in terms of creating a character and how, because of the way that our society is set up, we have an idea of a dominant paradigm, which is what most people think of when they're creating a character before you mark it with characteristics that differentiate from the dominant paradigm. So the dominant paradigm would be male, white, straight, able-bodied. They, in the book, they use a parable about someone falling into a river, and they say, we want you to picture someone falling into a river. And they talk about all the things that we picture from just hearing someone fell into a river and what that means, and how you can add characteristics to that someone to suddenly bring them to life as a person and as a marked character rather than the unmarked state. But when I started reading about it, I don't know why, for some reason I started to think about my dad, maybe because in a lot of ways he was a kind of a, I don't know, like an average person, just in those kind of box ticking ways, and maybe because he died when I was young and became a kind of a dominant paradigm to me in a slightly different way. So I wrote this poem, and it's called My Father as the Unmarked State. Let's say a man falls into a river. No, someone falls into a river. A hominid of the Homo genus falls, and without distinguishing details, cufflinks, side parting, a tendency to do the washing up at parties, you form an image of a person falling into a river. Maybe love. Maybe love falls into a river. Fuck it. A stirring father of the bride speech, sand in the sclera, bonhomie, couple of off-colour jokes, falls into a river. All the village elders, all the world's men fall into a river. Luke Perry and Jason Priestley fall. Tuesday says, I know we're not halfway yet, but I've had a week. Tuesday falls. Year 6 falls. My father, white, 5'10", medium hair, 6 children, secure position at IBM, catalytic converter, falls into a river. Middle C jumps off the great stave and falls. The cast of Friends falls into a river. My teenage indiscretions stuff period pants in the outside bin and fall into a river. The magic of Christmas falls into a river. One of these days, I fucking swear I'm going to fall into that river, but no, it's my father falling into a river, falling still. My father falls into a river. My father is, was, will be falling into a river. We may not reach the other side. So from my father, I'm going to read a poem about my mother. I didn't mean to do that when I was putting this set together, but it just kind of happened. This poem's called Unrolling a Joint for Your Mother. Now, that wasn't a common occurrence for me. It's actually only happened once. My mum was experiencing a lot of pain on one side, and she'd been prescribed some sort of quite strong painkillers, like it was some sort of opioid, but she'd run out and she couldn't get more. And so I thought to kind of offer, I had some weed kicking around, so I thought to offer her, why don't I roll you a joint, which, in my younger years I never would have done, and it would have been a sort of don't ask, don't tell situation. But I felt like we're grown-ups now. I can offer my mum a joint when she's in pain. So then I went round and rolled it for her, because of course she isn't very good at rolling, but actually it turned out that neither am I. So I'm gonna, anyway, I wrote a poem about it. On rolling a joint for your mother, you will channel a deftness that eludes you, some sleight of eye that hones you to hold you better. Forget the rolling mats that saw you through fresherhood, the saggy sleeping bags smoked in the 6 a.m. recourse of a dreaming room. Wrong-sided skins left you licking a nameless state. You're not playing now. You came all this way, Today, you are bending to a dresser as if you were kneeling at the door of a tree, while thinking how we arrive in pain. How pain is a warning that, yes, you are alive, and still, you will tell the tree that this woman, phone full of children eating, this woman typing in the dark, this woman who held you like night holds color in a night that began you, this woman is alive enough. You will kneel unskilled before the tree, hold its face until paper unpeels from bark and lies down, and your faith will scatter, but not crumble, on the upturned prism of these pages on which are written your entire life. And next I'm going to read a poem called Ziggurat, which I thought I would read tonight because it's one that Degna chose for issue 96 of the Rialto, which she was kind enough to publish me in. So I thought I would I'd bring it out for tonight. And it's a fantastic issue of the Rialto. I was really delighted to be a part of that. And this is a poem I wrote during lockdown when I was kind of probably losing my mind a little bit, like probably a lot of us were. And it was a really surreal time because we were kind of all, locked off and everything was kind of, closed and dead. But then one thing we were doing, because it was summer, was going out and going for walks and going out and in nature and kind of being on your own in nature. And that was a way of still feeling kind of connected to the world. And then when you reach that nature, there was just the kind of bizarre, incongruous sense of everything being alive still, and everything was kind of buzzing, but just without the humans. And I don't really know if that's what this poem's about, but I think that was kind of the catalyst for it somehow. So this is Ziggurat. Hang on a minute. I'm going to start again. Hang on a minute while I take the light. There's something here. This puddle, broken like a wrong egg. On the overpass, rusty lattice tessellates the magic hour. Sighing reservoir. I am younger. Catch my implicate order as I cross the carriageway. Shivering rainbow scale skin. Slim liquid liner. Look at me here. No children, no accountant, plain simple sky, a prom dress. Do you hear that? Shades on a motorbike. Shades off, lawnmower. Did you know me then? Squinting at the tiny berries, I whisper, thank you for keeping me alive and bringing me to this season. Kiss hot boughs at the creaking locks and painted barge names. Summer's violent music. Come on out from the yellow vetchling. This is just like you. I remember things that used to work. The hot crushing of desires into each other. Blossom, ring pools sweet as rhinestones, cuneiform of wet skin. The world is ours a little longer. Let's bury it beneath a temple we have yet to build, on top of which, a smaller temple, on top of which, a smaller temple, on top of which. The problem with potential is too many edges, on top of which I fold in and out, a paper fortune teller in a native's playground, on top of which, a smaller temple, on top of which, a blank score, on top of which, an acorn, damp and ticking. The next poem, this is going to be the last poem I read. This one is a poem I wrote after quite a strange scenario where I was walking in the cemetery with my mum, and I saw a gravestone that had a name on it. They've all got names on it. I saw a gravestone and I thought, oh, that dead guy's got the same name as a friend of mine. And of course it was the friend, it was the same person. But it kind of took me a minute to clock. I mean, this was someone that I knew when I was a teenager and I hadn't seen for many years. And I was probably about 30 at this point, and I didn't know what happened. And I never actually found out because I just didn't find out. But I wrote a poem about it instead, because that seemed like a way of making sense of things. So this is Finding Out You're Dead by Walking Past Your Grave. I ask your name, what it's doing on a stone. It doesn't answer, because that's not how names talk. When I see your name, I'm not in a poem, and nothing is the color of anything else. I'm locked on gravel by the loam soil houses of my dad and grandparents, who aren't there, although their names are. Since your name doesn't have much to say, I ask the stone. It also doesn't answer. Stone is a dense, unyielding claim, and it is much heavier than a soul, which is why they put it on top of dead people. When you line stones up like that, you have a deconstructed guessing game, or a theatre of closed mouths. Your name shines as if new, as if rain got lost in the shape of someone, as if nothing. But the dates kill you. I don't know why. I don't want blame to paint a picture on my phone. I ask a blank page why it's made of stone, and it tells me a version of a story. And then another. In the versions, the letters of your name shimmer like sun on the smile of a razor, shine on curved glass, a puddle in a pothole, or any other thing that takes light from a source before passing it up to the sky. Thank you very much for listening to me tonight. And yeah, looking forward to the rest of the evening.
Thank you very much, Amy. A little bit of Zoom applause there. And just to say, wow, what beautiful, precision engineered and quietly devastating poems they are. These are poems that kind of bring you into their confidence and then create these moments of life where we suddenly kind of get that illumination of something much greater than that single moment that just really stops us in our tracks. So really looking forward to Mother Song being published next year. Congratulations, Amy. We shall be putting that on our list for next year's Poetry Santa to bring us. Thank you very much. Fantastic. And now to our first reader tonight, launching a collection. So Proof of Life on Earth is Degna Stone's debut collection, and we are really, really thrilled to be celebrating tonight and to be hearing Degna read. Proof of Life on Earth is a really astounding book. It uses love as a form of guide in exploring really the matters of life and death. You live and then you die. There's got to be more to life than just simply that. And this book looks at all the stops between arrival and departure, examining those matters of the heart, whether they're medical or metaphorical, but also examining those things of the body, the mind, the self, also race, discrimination. These are really deft and scalpel-sharp poems, which really look at human existence in all of its different ways and ask what it means to do more than just simply survive, but live in defiance, openness, and awareness. I first met Degna through the complete work scheme, and I admire both the truth-telling, the lyrical beauty, and originality of their poems. And perhaps what I love most about Degna's poems is their ability to allow the reader to walk alongside them, to feel the pulse of life, walk in the graveyards of lost souls, or stand in a Northumbrian wind, or at the doors of an intensive care unit. These are poems of deep and meditative connection, wild, evocative, life-affirming. Please welcome Degna Stone.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Jane. And thank you to Amy. I just all the way through your readings, like the goosebumps kept going in the last poem. I think just about finished me. so hopefully I can put it back together and get on. So I would just want to say it's such a delight to be published by Nine Arches. And Jane has been such like a really like a just this like guiding hand, sort of like keeping me going through putting these poems together, and so I just really appreciate that, the care and the attention and the love that goes into Nine Arches publication. So thank you, Jane. I'm going to start off with a little tranche of love poems. Like the first one I'm going to read is an actual love poem, and then the ones that follow are like about love when it's a bit shit. So yeah, this first poem is like, I've only actually ever fallen in love once. I've been in love, but I think there's like like an interesting difference. I've only ever fallen in love, and luckily that's with my my husband. So this poem is called Love. Love feels like falling, or maybe like being high with no fear of a come down, but mostly it feels like falling. And I want to fall, to keep falling, to feel the air around me, my heart taking over my head, or maybe it feels like floating, if floating were possible without the aid of technology. It doesn't feel like parachuting or gliding or anything like control. It's like falling into light, into the cold of a cleansing fire, being stripped and reclothed. I should be afraid. Falling means falling hard. The chambers of my heart rearranged. It feels nothing and everything like flying, right up to the point of impact. And this next poem is kind of like an amalgamation of all the like terrible relationships I've ever experienced, whether that's a relationship of my own or ones that I've sort of like been on the periphery of. And it's written in the style of a dictionary entry, and it's after the poet Avan Jordan. It's called Over. 1. Above or beyond. She sang along to Somewhere Over the Rainbow, never imagining her own shoes could be ruby slippers, could carry her away. When she was a girl, her imagination always led to trouble. She soon learned that daydreamers were fools. Bit by bit, she locked her dreams inside. 2. Throughout the duration of. Over the years, it became apparent that they couldn't stand the sight, the smell, the thought of each other. 3. On the opposite side of. They could barely hold a civil conversation over the dinner table. 4. In consideration. She goes over the lists of things that piss her off about him every night as she brushes her teeth too hard. The way he talks down to her as if she's stupid. The way he hates her friends. The way he made her think she loved him, needed him, and then grew distant. She spits blood into the sink. 5. In repetition. She scrawled TLND across her school books, carved it around the empty inkwell on her desk. Did she really believe back then that true love never dies? Love is not a constant. You must fall in love over and over and over again. 6. In reference to, concerning. What are we fighting over? 7. Too great, excessive. Her mother always told her she was oversensitive. 8. Through all parts of. She stands naked in front of the bathroom mirror, looking over her body, running her hands over her skin, trying to remember what it felt like when he touched her. 9. Recovered from the effects of. Though there was never an exact date, she marked every birthday that would have passed. How can you celebrate the birthday of someone never born? Why aren't you over it by now? 10. Submerge or bury. She sank down and let the water close over her head. And this next poem I wrote when I was on residency in Iceland. It was really lovely. New Writing North paid me to go to Iceland for a week and pretend to be a writer. This was back in 2017. Yeah, it was great. There are two things about the poem. So one is the title of the poem, Vörður, which I can't say because I can't trill my R's. It means waymarkers. And there's a mythical being referenced, like, called Nikur. And Nikur are grey, like horse-like creatures that they'll entice you to ride them, and then they'll dash into the water and drown you. So this is Vörður. The wind makes instruments of half-built tower blocks. Dissonant harmonics carve a path through my brain, destroying its waymarkers until I can't find my way back. The only peace is found in mountains echoing clouds. So we leave the harbour but keep the coastline in view. If we lose sight of it, we believe the sea will vanish. The city shifts. We find ourselves at the ghost of the old shoreline, where you tell me tales of houses that wander through town and statues that walk from overlooked corners to find a home where the swans protect us from Nikur, but not ourselves. The wind grows fierce at Reykjanes. We don't know where to begin, so we wind our way across the ash-black landscape. The heather looks like embers, sand grits between our toes. We topple the waymarkers as we walk. We aren't interested in finding our way back. There is no point in going back. We are not going home. You sit away from the edge of the cliff in the lee of a waymarker. I stand with my back to the sea watching you, willing the wind to take the feet from under me and hurl me into the air. I imagine myself floating down like Jesus descending from heaven, submerging past monochromatic birds littering the swell, freeing myself of the bond that ties me to the landscape. But the wind dies down, and here I still am, still watching you sit in the lee of a waymarker. Tell me stories of how the water baptized you, took away your sense of self, how it will heal you or kill you. The ocean's will to let you escape with your life depends on the moods of its tides. What happens when the sea turns against you, when it tires of the burden of you on its surface? God's name won't leave your lips, sticks in your throat, and drowns the good in you. We meet ourselves coming back from the edge of our senses, feel the emptiness more than ever. How can I be responsible for my heart? How can I be responsible for your heart when I am no longer responsible for my own? And this is the last of the love poems, Perfidia. It's like listening to Siri navigate after his voice changed in the update. You know what he's saying, but not what he's getting at. It's his diction, clipped, like he's withholding something from you. How can you trust him? You want to see the shape of his mouth, want to watch the words physically form on the lips he doesn't have. How can you understand what he's saying when you can't see what he's saying? Instead, his words appear by magic. And who can understand magic? So these next two poems, my political poems, I guess, what a better phrase. This government is a shower of absolute shit. I am I'm just amazed at the depths that they sink to. So these two poems, I guess, are in an oblique way about them. The first is called Short-Sighted. Men with spines as strong as the Tyne Bridge are building flat-bottomed boats too small to rescue even minuscule folk. They seal the holes with the green that grows on the top of yogurt, a fleet for known unknowns. You can tell them the boats will take on water, won't float, but you're wasting your breath. They won't listen. Go to your homes, cup your worries in your palms, turn them over and over until they are cultured to pearls. In this next poem, I wrote on the first anniversary of the Grenfell fire tragedy. And it's written after a painting by the artist Sean Scully, and these like massive painting with like stripes, like kind of like grid-like stripes. And this particular poem reminded me of a tower block. When you looked at it, when you stood back and looked at it, it just reminded me of a tower block. So this is Red Light. When the news leaves you overshadowed, leaves you living in the ruins of avoidable disasters, you find sanctuary, find salvation in the Lang. Inside the gallery, there is never total peace. The air conditioning stage whispers white noise, the type that might soothe a fretful baby. But standing in front of red light, you want to scream. Want the red lines to absorb the pain ripping your throat, hollowing your lungs. You want to be heard. You shrink until the painting holds the menace of a tower block with all the horror that brings, the thought of being trapped, being afraid to die. To calm yourself, you count the colours, count the lines, try to figure out which was laid down first. You want to disappear into this painting. At the lower right corner, there is a luminescence. The spaces between the lines seem bigger. There's more room to think, more room to be yourself. You wait until you are completely alone, then cross the border of the painting, picking your way under each stripe of acrylic, challenging yourself to travel further in until you reach the ground, the first layer of paint, with its complexity of colour, its sinuous waves. You still cannot find rest. Your mind is too full of where you have been, of what you have left behind. You realise each red line links you to someone you've loved, even as these same red lines hold you hostage, keep you caged inside the painting, with no way to get back through. Suppose it makes sense if you have a title poem, makes sense to read the title poem. So this is Proof of Life on Earth, and it was written in response to the collection at Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, but it was also written during a time when my mother-in-law Marion Williams was dying of leukemia, and so this was, you know, the fact of this was playing on my mind as I was wandering through Pitt Rivers, which is a fascinating and bizarre place. Proof of Life on Earth. In the museum of 500,000 objects, my eyes don't know where to settle, so I lose myself amongst the maze of cases. Every surface is covered, every cabinet packed with artifacts, acquisition numbers tattooed conspicuously in precise white paint. The guide says much of the collection relates to how to attract a loved one, how to survive, how to deal with grief. In my private state of deferred grief, amidst the ordered chaos of the present in conversation with the past, I am drawn to the weapons of war. In the upper gallery, the tools we use to harm each other, objects whose sole function is to cause injury or death, are displayed according to type. I learned that the sword was developed purely for human combat, and that in most cultures, women and swords are rarely found. The evolution of guns mirrors the evolution of man, trial and error and experimentation, each new generation more efficient, more lethal. There is a broadsword too heavy to carry, and a Walther PP too dangerous to be placed in the hands of a poet. Objects out of bounds. Instead, I study a single late medieval boot, 100 hobnails hammered into its sole and a brass acromonil in the form of a horse. We can look, but not touch. So I slip into a minor state of sensory deprivation, sketch the boot's layers of old animal skin, try to conjure the wearer and connect with a time when technology evolved slowly, where history was recorded at a human pace. I imagine the aquamanil filled with water. Imagine purifying my hands of the trauma of passing through the stages of life, rinsing away the fear that comes from awaiting the death of a loved one, and an ever-deepening belief in the absence of any gods. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Degna. What an just beautiful, astonishing reading. Those poems are always so poised and fiercely put together. There's just something really beautiful in their composition. The chambers of my heart rearranged. These are kind of poems that have a definite point of impact upon us. Really beautiful, astonishing poems, by turns political and personal, always with that musically attentive ear as well. Thank you so much, Degna. And Proof of Life on Earth is Degna Stone's debut collection. We are so excited. Congratulations, Degna. It's wonderful to see this book out in the world. And it's been always really wonderful as an editor to be on that journey with our writers, to see them from, you know, the first parts of an early, you know, sort of collection coming together, whether that's a first collection or, like our next reader, Roy McFarlane, a third collection. It's always a real joy to see that journey of poems kind of coming together around an idea in the shape of a book taking hold. Really, really exciting. So to tell you a little bit about Roy McFarlane and the book that he's launching tonight, Living by Troubled Waters. This is, as I mentioned, a third collection, and to tell you a little bit more about the book, it's an uncompromising book that explores slavery and colonialism and how the strong currents of the past and our present flow side by side. It's also a book which is interestingly experimental with form. So I definitely advise, and not because I'm trying to sell you a book, but although obviously I am, but there are some really astounding pieces in here of visual poetry as well, and what Roy calls erasure and inclusion poetry. So it's definitely a book that's worth seeing as well in the flesh. Roy has also worked by using archival documents and interweaving these into his collection so that the poems speak to a wider body of themes as well throughout this collection of history. But also this is a book which is engaged very much with art, with culture, particularly with Black art, Black culture, Black motherhood, love, music, and particularly when we talk about art, I should mention the gorgeous cover by Hugh Locke and the poems within that refer to Roy's own interactions with Hugh Locke's work. If there was a poetic equivalent of a TV programme, I think there is very much a sense that Living by Troubled Waters would have been an episode of Small Axe, the Steve McQueen. There are moments of kind of lovers rock and all set against the backdrop of the 1970s, exploring both his relationship with his father as well. So it's been a really fascinating journey to be on with Roy on this incredible collection, and to have been with him along the way, seeing him doing research at the British Library, hearing about his journey through the archives there, and the ambition and scope of this really incredible book. So without further ado, would you please welcome our final reader for this evening's launch, Roy McFarlane.
Wow. Okay. What a wonderful afternoon we're having, or evening. It's the evening, isn't it? Well, it could be afternoon if we got some international folks. Could be middle of the night. Yes, but you know where I'm coming from. I've probably been drinking too much of this, but it's the launch of a book. And so if you got a glass out there, please raise, because Degna's Proof of Life on Earth is amazing, right? And I love that last poem, Proof of Life on Earth. I had let me drink this. I had the good fortune to see Degna. I was part of the putting that together with Renaissance One, and I saw Degna read that live in the museum, and oh my God, just to be in that museum and Degna just was awesome. Also, Amy, it's been a pleasure. I had the good fortune to do some work with Amy and Bad Betty Press in Nottingham. They invited me to join there for one day. I think I was adopted by Bad Betty Press. It was an amazing evening. So thank you, Amy. But I guess you want to hear some poetry. So let's start. I'm not, if you're following by text, I'm gonna have to, who's ever put these things up as written, I'm probably gonna just do 6 out of the 10. So just roll with me when I skip the middle part. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna start with mothers. Listening to Amy talking about her father and her mother, I think this is perfect to start with. And as always, anybody who's bought the other 2 books, and if you haven't, well, anyway, you will know that I always talk about my mother, and this mom's always coming into my collection. And I really wanted to start this collection, not only that kind of declaration of a scream about marginalized Black bodies, almost like the violence that's visited upon us, that leaves us screaming by troubled waters. But I wanted to sort of declare that even in that journey, there are places of sanctuaries. And I think that the Black womanhood, Black mothers, Black women are powerful places of sanctuary during these times. So this one's called, I'm talking about somebody else there. Okay, here we go. Living by Troubled Waters. And there's 4 different living by troubled waters. So this is number 2. And just to say about my mom was the wife of a deacon. I was a child of a minister, and she staunchly believed in God, in the spirits, in the Holy Ghost. And there are certain things that when I was growing up, it was just a natural thing to watch my mother do what she did. But sometimes you see my mom talking to the walls or talking to somebody. And it's funny, it's only now I'm looking back, it's, well, there's a fine line that some people might call mental health, and then others might say, my mom just was talking to the spirits, finding a way of sanctuary in this troubled world. Living by troubled waters. Our house was often visited by spirits. Waters often found their way into our home. My mother, of sound mind, saw things other people didn't see. Her whole body a divining rod. She moved gracefully in the spirit when it poured, danced in the pool, raised her arms, spellbound to the sky, as if she could touch and hold onto the source. We lived in a semi-detached house on a hill. Water trickled in, leaving trails and watermarks. Only my mother noticed and tried to ignore. Smiling when she saw I was watching, and she whispered to the walls as they drooled. My mother, who mellowed by still waters, could not be at peace. And in the nursery, I learned of duppies and rolling calves, of climbing a flight of stairs on hands and knees, of a boxed room big enough to leave a memory in a corner, darkness embodied, moving into the light, stretching forth an arm, and a child flying down a flight of stairs, sitting on a magic carpet, crying, "Bada, bada, bada," upstairs. We left the house on the top of a hill, always moving until mother found serenity in a home by still waters. So, like I said, the first section looks at Black mothers. I was brought up by so many wonderful mothers of the church, a little section in there. My mother told me stories, and especially when I'm looking and engaging, I wanted to engage with the archives of the past, of the 1800s, and something about how my mom was a news reporter through the oral traditions of telling me stories that I had no dates about until I researched and found these stories, are almost true, or they could have been poetically added to, but these were stories, news reports that were passed from mother to mother to mother through oral tradition. One of the archives that I found, which was intriguing, looked at this poem's called "The Passion of the Enslaved on the Body of a Negro." And hopefully if you've got it there, you'll be able to see, you won't have time, but in the middle is the actual archive from early 1800s. And it's a coroner's report regarding about half a dozen enslaved people. And what bugged me about this coroner's report, that there was nothing about the hell that they'd gone through, the pain, the sufferings, but the end of the report was either passion found in the body, I'm trying to find the quote, but I can't say it exactly, or visitation of God. These people violated mentally, physically, and their souls, and their answer when they found their dead bodies is that they said it was a visitation of God. So I wrote this poem towards it, into it, which I call my inclusion process. Of excess of passion in herself, of life lived but not of your own, to suffer, to bear, to endure, of every sunrise you could not own, of every sweat, of every blood shed, lay down in the cooper's shop, lay down in the valley of eternal sunrise. On the body of a Negro man, William, a runaway, died by the visitation of God at the asylum. On a Negro woman, name unknown, died by the visitation of God at the asylum. On the body of a Negro woman, Sally, died by the visitation of God. God goes a visiting, walks into asylum, bodies of Milano, walking with those who talk to the many voices, walking with those that leave broken bodies, walking with those who drift in the husk of yesterday's breath. God goes a visiting in the place of refuge, the place of silence, where no one has the rights of seizure, in the place of sanctuary. Death goes a visiting on the bodies of Milano. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. It's quite interesting looking at that word refuge and broken down. It has a connection to silo and sanctuary. And the second section looks, and I joined with Degna with that kind of cry about this government and the madness and all that kind of thing that's going on. And I'm also, if Anna Saunders is out there, I'm grateful for her words this morning on Twitter that she was putting out this poem, Rio Grande, and put also an article from The Guardian beside it. So if you get the chance, have a look at the article. But I wanted to read this and say thanks to Anna. Rio Grande. After Oscar Alberto Martina Ramirez and 23-month-old Valeria. I think it was about 2018. I might have got the dates wrong. 2018, 2019. There's an image of a man and his daughter sticking her head from underneath his t-shirt, both lying on the muddy banks of the Rio Grande, trying to cross over. A daughter wraps her arms around her father's neck, head protruding from his shoulder under his t-shirt, like conjoined twins. My daughter wrapped herself around me after we'd walked for miles, feigned sleep for those extra meters wrapped around me. They're lying face down, cushioned in the muddy water. Reeds of blankets surrounds them, undisturbed in their sleep. My daughter wrapped herself around me in the pouring rain, in the belief that she would be safe and warm. A daughter still holds on to her father, crossing the river from the underworld into the American dream. My daughter wrapped herself around me, leg broken from a gymnastic routine we had practiced so many times, and I am helpless to take the pain away. The father lies face down in the marshy banks of the Rio Grande, helpless as a daughter holds on, wrapped in the arms of a new dawn. We have got to stop putting up borders. We are a global movement of migration for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Why now are we putting up borders and creating impossible routes for people who will always, no matter how many borders you put up, if a man is running from persecution, if a man is running from starvation, he will find any way, anyhow, to find a better life. Why are we doing this? Okay, listen. Let me take you to the act of remembering. I'm going to skip a couple of poems now, right? And I want to take you to when I'm talking about living by troubled waters, growing up, finding places of sanctuary. And the church was a place of sanctuary. But what I found in this thing here, right? The act of remembering. Growing up in the church, we had an act where we'd have the Lord's Supper. We were in a Pentecostal church. We had the Lord's Supper. Then after the Lord's Supper, we had the washing of the saints' feet. The men go over to one side, the women go over to the side, and you washed each other's feet. It was a beautiful sign of love. But what I recognize and acknowledge now is that this is one of those legacies that survived enslavement, survived the Middle Passage, and survived so many things. Also, you'll hear a song in there, Meet Me by the River. A lot of these songs were spirituals, and spirituals also had an encoded message for enslaved people that tonight, get ready, because we're running away tonight. Here we go, the act of remembering. We took off our brogues, leathers, and crocodile skins, folded our silk socks whilst others with their clocks and cotton socks waited for eyes to be distracted by sisters in white, singing, meet me by the river someday, meet me by the river, not far away. Old men who knew rivers waited for the pouring of water in enamel basins, waited for the pouring of the Spirit, hands clapping, backs arched, the jerk, the side drop, the top torso wavering in an imaginary wind blowing through the aisles. We jostled to wash our best friend's feet, avoided the hard-skinned, corn-heavy, decade-stained feet of old men. But the old souls knew the game, broke the line, changed the seating, wrapped white towels around our waist singing, and when my Lord shall call me home, happy, happy home, beyond the skies, meet me by the river someday. Our white shirts, sleeves rolled up, silk ties tucked away. We kneeled before elders, scooped handfuls of water, washed weary feet, leaving a bowl filled with a cloud of witness. Fathers, I'm going to quickly go into this because I have not talked about my father through several collections. And this is my third collection, and Lord knows my father has come strongly to me. And also I want to kind of acknowledge, hopefully Pauline is in the Zoom. Pauline lost her father a couple of years ago. A wonderful man, the Irish spirit in this guy was awesome when I visited him in hospital. And for all those who have lost somebody, hopefully you'll understand this. You left in between the snowdrops that fell lightly. In a world of floppy disk and hard drives, with Christmas around the corner, I get a phone call, you need to come to the hospital. The day before, you were supposed to be coming home. You heard my mother struggle to move you from bed to chair. A practice run for what life would be, moving your stroke-hit body like a mighty Hulk. You were leaning, heavy, struck by lightning. I see Mum at the entrance of the ward. Right, Daddy gone, Daddy gone. I hold Mum to the mumbling of nurses, and I'm trying to compute. And there you are, behind a closed curtain, unbelievably still. So you're gone, old man. You're really gone. I touch your chest. And there's something solid about your chest, something absolute, the lack of movement, and I know you're not coming back. I make a pillow of your chest and lie there. Tears trickle onto this rock. It's only been an hour since they called me. Warmth still resides in you, like in the morning. The heat left over from the cold fires you made the evening before. Fires I'll have to make. Mom stirs me. Ryan, I was here all the time. I only popped oats. And when I come back, he head lean, mouth open, me touching any head. I'm holding my mom as she cries and bawls. She who never left your side imagines she has failed you, but you knew what you were doing. And outside, Christmas draws near and time falls lightly like snow as the world programs itself for celebration. Thank you. You've been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roy. Wow, those poems are so powerful. They're so deeply humane. There's pain and righteous outrage and love in those poems. And also that clarion call for change. Thank you so much for a very, very moving set of poems. Poems as sanctuary, poems as activism, poems of witness. And we've had a really extraordinary set of readings tonight, I think. There's just some really wonderful comments from our audience tonight on the YouTube chat as well. Thank you to everybody who's been joining us, and thank you to everybody who's been leaving us wonderful comments as the readings have been going on this evening about how much they've enjoyed the poems, how moving they found them. Thank you so much for being with us. It always feels really special to have this digital connection with audiences in all sorts of different locations, and to be joining with you tonight and sharing poetry, a really, really powerful sharing of poetry, especially I think this evening. And what has been really noticeable as well between our three incredible readers, Degna Stone, Roy McFarlane and Amy Acre, is the connections that their work has as well, whether that's between family, mothers and fathers and the generations before us, whether that's love and loss and facing up to mortality, whether it's history and personal history being the prism through which we see all those bigger narratives of history as well. A really extraordinary set of readings. So can I just ask everybody to join me for one moment? I will bring all of our readers together on the screen, if that's okay. And we'd love to give you a final Zoom applause before the end of the evening. Thank you very much, Degna Stone, Roy McFarlane, Amy Acre. Fantastic readings. Thank you so much to our wonderful audience again for joining us on YouTube. I've been Jane Kemain from Nine Arches Press, and it has been a real delight to join you for this very special launch event for these two wonderful books with three wonderful readers. Thank you very much, and we'll say our good nights and give you all a Zoom wave. Thank you and good night, everybody.